Well, hello everybody. Thank you very much indeed for joining Paul and I on this first Missing in Action Peace in Mind conference. We're just going to sort of cover off a little bit of introduction about who we are, and then I'll go into a bit of admin about what we're going to do today, how it's going to work, and then explain what it is that we're trying to achieve, and see where that takes us. So yeah, I'm Dave Hill. I was a British Army officer for 17 years. I've been out of the army now for 8 years, and during that time I've been looking after or helping former soldiers of mine in the main try and find some peace of mind now that they're back home and safe whilst they're being sort of chased by their demons. And more recently, I've been working with Paul on setting up Missing in Action, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. So I'll just hand over to Paul to explain who he is.
I'm just letting people in as we talk as well. Hello there, I'm Paul. As Dave says, we've been working together almost for 12 months now with Missing in Action. It started off as an idea for a book project, which Dave will explain more shortly. And I'm former Royal Air Force back in, I think it was 87 to 94. And then I was a first responder for 23 years. And I fully, openly admit that, you know, I suffered from PTSD when I was in the military on one particular tour to the former Balkans region, former Yugoslavia, and struggled for quite some time until I came across the 3 principles understanding, which has really helped. And I know Dave's going to talk about that shortly as well. So I'm going to hand back over to Dave, and I'll be here in the background.
Thanks, Paul. So yeah, just to sort of cover off some admin points to start off with. As you'll see, we are recording this, but it isn't going out live. So you don't have to worry about any information going wider than the group of people that's here just now. You're more than welcome to have your video on or off. That's completely your call. And if you want to ask a question, that's absolutely cool. You know, we'll have a sort of period of questions probably during each talk towards the latter end. And if you want to ask a question in person, just raise your hand electronically, and then that will allow us to see the order in which people have got their questions. But if you don't feel comfortable asking a question, sorry, someone's just, there we go, thank you. If you don't feel comfortable asking a question and being, you know, us hearing your voice, please just write that question into the chat box, and Paul and I will ask that question for you. And we won't mention your name in doing so, because obviously we want to respect your privacy if that's something that you're worried about. Again, we're recording this so that we can use the content on our website so other people can access it going forwards. And if you don't want to appear in that, then again, just let us know and we can edit that out before we start posting anything online. So if you are concerned, please just let us know. So you've heard who Paul and I are. You've heard a very little bit about what Missing in Action is. And you've heard Paul mention the 3 principles. So I'm just wondering if we can just get a quick show of hands at the moment of who hasn't heard of the 3 principles before, who's completely new to this understanding, and that just gives an idea of what I need to cover in the next 45 minutes. Okay, cool. So it looks like most of you have, which is great. But what I will do is I'll just give a quick overview as I'm going through this to give us some a steer for those that haven't come across it before, and we can send out some materials to try and help you understand a little bit more in the fullness of time, because today's topic is all around the military, veteran and first responder communities, and trying to help them feel in a place of peace of mind. That's what we're hoping to achieve through this conference, through the book that Paul mentioned. So again, just getting back to the admin points, as I said, we're recording it. The format for each of the talks will be probably talking for, you know, whoever the speaker is, talking for 20 to 30 minutes, and then a period of 15 to 20 minutes of questions after that, aiming to finish at around quarter to the hour each time, so that we give ourselves a bit of a break to go and do whatever we need to, recharge teacups, all that kind of stuff. During that time, we'll put you all back into the waiting room. You don't need to leave the link, but we'll move everybody back into the waiting room, and that allows Paul and I to have a quick chat with the next speaker, make sure that they're happy, that they're comfortable with what's coming up, and away we go from there. And then on the hour, we'll let everybody back into the session, and away we go from there. So yeah, that's the admin covered. So what is missing in action? What are Paul and I trying to achieve with this conference and the other bits of the project that we're talking about? Well, as Paul's mentioned, he in the past has struggled with post-traumatic stress, and it's been through learning about this understanding of the 3 principles that's really helped him. For me, I haven't suffered with post-traumatic stress, but I have been dealing with a number of former riflemen that have served with me over the years that have been struggling with post-traumatic stress, and I've been wanting to try and help them as best I can in the moment work their way through through their troubles, and help them realize that they are safe, that they are well and healthy, and that they're as their understanding grows, that their thoughts and memories aren't there to hurt them, they're there potentially to guide them. And that sounds a little bit weird. We'll keep coming back round to that during the next 8 or 9 hours as we're going through the various different conversations. So it's trying to repoint people back to their innate health, the fact that they are mentally healthy all the time. The only thing that changes in that and what stops us from feeling that is the relationship that we have with our thoughts from moment to moment. And I know that's quite a lot to take in right now, but that's where this conversation is going to go for the remainder of our time together today. So this idea started off with Paul and I deciding that we wanted to try and bring a book into the world. It's a non-profit idea, and the plan is to get 30 to 40 different stories of people's journeys from a place of mental distress, from whatever form that's taken, through to rediscovering their own peace of mind and feeling more comfortable in their lives in a routine way. And we thought by sharing people's stories in their own voices, that we'd have a real opportunity for individuals to see that there's some hope out there, that where they are at the moment in their thoughts, where, the way that they're feeling and experiencing the world around them isn't the end of the road, that there is always hope to be able to see something different, something fresh, and something that allows you to live more comfortably with the experience that we're all going through. So that's the premise, and with it being a book, and with it being a non-profit idea, and with the fact that we both have lives to get on with and things to do, and that the majority of the people that we're asking to take part in the book, we're interviewing and then typing that up. And I'm a typical infantryman. I type with 2 fingers and the occasional thumb on the space bar. It's taking us time to pull that together. And with some unfortunate events that happened in the summer from the rifles perspective, we lost 2 guys to suicide in 48 hours. And at that point in May, Paul and I both decided that we wanted to do something different. We wanted to try and see what we could do while the book was coming to life. And that spawned the idea for this conference, and it spawned the idea of a monthly, or what's ended up being a monthly call on the 2nd Tuesday of each month. Again, a little bit of a space like this for people to share ideas and hopefully find some peace of mind. So that gives you an idea of what the project's about, what we're trying to achieve. Now, the sort of background to all of this piece of the direction that we're looking in, the people that we're talking about, the people that we're trying to help, put themselves in harm's way for us, whether they've served in the military or whether they're serving as first responders in the police force, the fire brigade, the ambulance service, the Coast Guard, the RNLI, whatever, the lifeboats, whatever it happens to be. They are putting themselves in harm's way for our benefit, to keep us safe. And that's an amazing thing for people to do for us. And what Paul and I felt was that we needed to try and do something more, something different, that tried to change the narrative around what it looks like with regards to mental well-being for people that have experienced some really traumatic stuff. Because we have all probably experienced things that are traumatic, that have caught our attention and had a grip of us from time to time, and then lost sight of that, and it's not been so visceral in our consciousness. But actually, when we start looking in this direction, and we're looking at people that are routinely dealing with traumatic incidences, there's an idea in society that well, that's going to have a long-term effect on you as an individual, that there is a chance that you will be irreparably damaged as a result of your service, and then it just becomes around trying to manage that for the rest of your life. And for the people that I've been speaking to for the last 8 to 10 years since I left, that's been something that's really been grinding them down. The thought that in their late 20s, early 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever it happens to be, whatever stage it is that they find themselves getting caught up, they don't want to be pigeonholed and put into a corner and feel so rubbish for the rest of their lives. And I know a number of them have contemplated or even attempted to take their lives, which is massively sad, because they're now at home and they're now safe, and it's been frustrating seeing how many people are suffering in that way, and I've been looking to try and find some form of answer to what might change that, how we can change the relationship with that. Now, there's some amazing things going on in the world. There are some amazing treatments out there. There are some wonderful organizations doing great things. But people are still falling through the cracks. And what my vision in all of this, and in what I'm now doing for a living through a firm called Simplicity in Mind, is trying to connect people back to their own mental well-being, something that they have already. So not only am I trying to, and Paul and I are trying to help individuals that are struggling in this moment, what we completely know and understand is that actually the answer's wider than that. The real chance for people is to feel more connected with their friends, their relatives, the people that they've grown up with, that they know and trust, that they might not be telling them how they're feeling about, because they don't want to hurt them or they don't want to worry them. Well, the idea behind all of that, or all of this, is to try and repoint people back to the fact that anybody can help anybody else. We don't have to be experts in any particular field to be a human being. And actually, it's that human connection that people feel. We will have all probably come across doctors that are very, very capable at what they do, but their bedside manner is not particularly brilliant. And we've also come across other doctors that their bedside manner has been everything. And it's the bedside manner bit, the connection from one human to another, that carries the day, that builds that trust and enables people to feel safe. And that is something that we all have the capacity to do, and have the capacity to in abundance, despite how we feel. Okay, so the starting point for me on this journey was a friend phoning up from hospital, having been sectioned 8 years ago, saying, "Boss, please help. This is what's happened, and I don't quite know what to do about it. Can you help me, please?" And I knew that I had no idea how to help, but I also knew how important it was that this individual had put his hand up, how much courage it had taken him to do that, and that I knew he was physically safe in that moment because he told me he was in hospital. I also knew that if I was to run away from that situation and go, "Sorry, I don't know what I can do," that might be him shutting the door on himself. and I didn't want that to happen. So I put my misgivings to one side about what it was that I might be able to do, and just sat back and listened to try and see what would show up. I had no idea why that came to mind. It just seemed like the right thing to do. And it's carried, you know, that the form of those conversations has carried on for a number of years. 5 years ago, I had a mental wobble myself, nothing to do with my service, but completely and everything to do with my home life. I was told that our marriage was ending, which I wasn't expecting, and it completely knocked the stuffing out of me. But I also, in that moment of feeling completely dark and lost, knew that that wasn't the answer, that we were all okay and it would be all right. I absolutely had faith that everything would be okay. I could see it, that was a possibility, no matter whether we stayed together or we ended up separate. That wasn't, you know, that wasn't in doubt. What was in doubt, though, was my ability to cope in that moment. As I said, I was completely beaten up by it, and what I came to see was that it was me beating myself up. I thankfully decided to put my money where my mouth was in terms of the advice I've been giving to other people about speaking to their friends and sharing where they were, in an effort to help them stop feeling so alone, because I felt very alone in that moment. But I knew that I probably should speak to a couple of people, and I reached out to some friends and said, look, I'm not expecting you to know the answer to my questions or my current situation, but I know that just spending time with you will be helpful, because it will stop my mind racing in an unpleasant direction. I also went to my employer and said, I think I need some time off. I'm going to the doctor next. I don't think I'm going to be of any use to you at the moment in my current mindset. And they were brilliant. They were absolutely fantastic. And I went to the doctor and said, I don't want anything from you at the moment. I just want you to know where I am. I'm worried I'm going to become depressed. And if I come back, it's because I really need some help. But at the moment, I want nothing. They did look at me like I had two heads, because it's not what they normally get from their patients. But it gave me great comfort to know that I'd covered off some bases. I'd ticked some things off, and that I'd basically put my problems out in the world a little bit. I then spent a bit of time reading a lot of books, doing a lot of running, not sleeping much, not eating much, losing a lot of weight. Not that I had much to lose in the first place, but in that process of reflecting and looking at what was going on in my life, how I might get myself back on an even keel so I could be a useful parent, and a useful husband in whatever guise that looked like in that moment. I came across an idea that just dropped into my mind one day while I was pretending to go to work, that my thoughts weren't real and I didn't have to react to them. I had no idea where that thought came from, but it hit me right between the eyes, to the point that I just laughed out loud at myself on the train, because I could see completely what was going on. My thoughts fell into three different buckets. There were things that were true, that were fact, and could be managed. There were things that were false, that were dismissed. Well, that's fine. That doesn't exist anymore. And then there was the stuff that had a grain of truth, that might be true, but there was no external substance to it. And those were the bits that were hurting, or felt like they were hurting, because my mind was racing and building on them and making them more and more and more unpleasant, and thinking of more and more possibilities of what ifs and shoulds and all the other things that can get in the way of us living in the moment that we're currently in. So I realized that I was having thoughts and catastrophizing about them, innocently catastrophizing about them, but I also could see that was what was getting in the way of me enjoying whatever life had to throw at me in that moment, because I knew we were all safe and well, and I knew we would all thrive in the end, whatever the outcome. And so that day on the train was a big moment. Within a week, I was back at work, and I haven't looked back. And it was through speaking to a friend after all of that, that is in the three principles community. I didn't even know what the three principles were at that stage, but has been working in this area for quite some time. That he said, "Oh, that's interesting. Well, it makes perfect sense that that's what's happened, and the route that you've gone down, and how you've ended up where you are. I help people with that day in, day out, but normally I'm there to help guide them, to try and point them in a direction, to allow them to see that they're healthy and that they're okay. And what's interesting about you, Dave, is you've managed to get there on your own. Now, that's not unique at all. That's inbuilt in every single one of us. And that blew my mind slightly when he said that. He then identified a couple of books that I should read and a video I should watch. And I did. And it bowled me over, because what I read in those pieces and heard in the videos that I watched was that I have been guided my whole life by some inbuilt wisdom that sometimes I took for granted and ignored, and sometimes just showed up when I needed it, and sometimes just kept me alive. It gave me the ability to see something fresh that was, that wasn't there before. And it just went, oh my God, that's it. That is amazing. And from that, I then got terribly anxious, because I could see how helpful this would be for my friends that were struggling, how it could really help the community that we're talking about here, because it's looking at something that they all possess already. They're just not necessarily aware of it. And I thought, this has real utility. But my anxiety came about, well, what if I don't know this well enough and I'm making it up? What if, and I went down that sort of what if trail. However, I was very curious about it, and I could really see that there was some utility in it. And I decided to throw some money at the problem, and went off and did a course. And it was the best money I've ever spent. I realized during it that I didn't actually need the course, but it gave me enough confidence to give me the push to go, yes, this is really, really helpful. This will and has the potential to help all the people that you're trying to help feel safe, even though they feel that they're not, despite the fact that they are at home and that they are in comfortable surroundings. So I'm going to use a little bit of military terminology now, just because it'll hopefully help paint a picture for the veterans that are out there to see where we're looking at. So when we're given a mission, when we're told this is the direction that we need to do and why, we're given an end state. We're told this is what we're trying to achieve. And in and amongst that, there's a main effort. There's something for us to go and pin our hats on. If all else fails, if you put your effort into looking at the main effort and trying to support that, then we will achieve our end state. So for this, what's the end state that Paul and I are trying to achieve with this conference? Well, the end state is people living comfortable, healthy, productive lives, despite their pasts, despite their current circumstances. So that's where we would like people to be. The main effort is peace of mind, because with peace of mind comes the ability to fulfill and experience and see that ability to be happy. So today, and the talks that you're going to hear will be coming from some wonderful people that I've either worked with or Paul's worked with, that I've collaborated with on projects with veterans in mind, that have taught me and continue to still teach me, or people that have done the course that I've done. Because together, we're trying to point people in a direction that shows them that they are okay, despite how they feel right now. That they don't need to be scared of the thoughts that they have and the memories that they've got. That those thoughts and memories don't define them, and that they have every opportunity to live that happy, healthy, and contented life that is the end state. that's basically every human being's birthright, and every human being is trying to achieve. Well, if you know that that is what's in you already, and that the only thing that's stopping you seeing that is the degree to which you are experiencing peace of mind in this moment, well, then that's a bit of a game changer. So I'm conscious that we're sort of 25 minutes in now, and I've not actually talked about what the principles are. So I'm going to do that quickly now, explain that, and then go on to my ask for you for today, as you hear these various different talks that you're going to experience and go through. So the principles. The principles are a concept. They're just like anything else that a human being has created. They are the best way to describe something at this moment in time. When Sydney Banks first came across this understanding, the three principles weren't even a thing. They hadn't been sort of codified at that stage. That didn't happen for quite some time. But Sid Banks in the early 70s saw something that completely changed the direction of his life. And what's most exciting about what Sid saw is that while it completely changed him and how he saw the world around him, despite the fact that nothing physically changed for him, he also knew that that was true for every single person on this planet, no matter who they were, no matter what they were going through or where they were. And that's what got me excited about this, because you know, the British Army, the British Forces is a completely multicultural organization. It's got peoples of every belief and no beliefs, and everything else in between. And where Sid is pointing, or where Sid and the understanding is pointing, is to something spiritual, something that's intangible in every single one of us. And spirituality is something that people shy away from or think's got a religious connotation or whatever it happens to be. And to the degree that you believe that it does, then it does. But every single one of us, whether we believe in something or not, something bigger than us or not, know that there is something inside us that makes us alive, stops us just being a bunch of cells, a bunch of atoms. There's something that creates the bit of us that's animated, that's able to see and speak and feel and experience. And that bit disappears when we die from this form of us in this current guise. That energy doesn't really go anywhere, bizarrely. You know, everything that's around us that we experience day to day has been around since the beginning of the Big Bang in one guise or another. It just happens to be that there are a bunch of puddles of that sat around the various bits of the world at the moment, watching a screen, listening to me talk. Now, it's that spiritual bit that the principles are pointing at. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. So the principles, there are three of them, as the name implies: mind, consciousness, and thought. And what I'd like you to try and do, for those that haven't come across the principles before, is divorce them from their dictionary meaning, because that's where I got stuck to start off with when I was going down this route. I got hooked on what I thought the meaning of those words were in relation to what I was being told in this context. And when I raised that was my concern, I was thought, oh, okay, well, let's not call the one you're struggling on by the name that it's got. Let's call it blancmange or three. And at that point, I go, oh, okay, well, that's fine then. If it's got nothing to do with the word itself and everything to do with what's behind it, then let's go with that. So universal mind, what's that looking at? Well, that's looking at the energy that is flowing through the universe. It's the stuff that everything is made of, and it's driving everything that we do and see around us. You know, it's the stuff in DNA that turns our cells into the cells that they're going to be. It's the stuff in an acorn that turns it into an oak tree. It's that, basically, and it's everywhere. And,
recording in progress.
It's all pervasive, and most importantly, it's neutral. It doesn't have any judgment on what's right or what's wrong. It just shows up and is then used by us from moment to moment. So that's universal mind. Universal consciousness, that isn't the fact that we are conscious, it's the fact that we have the ability to experience things, that the ability to be aware. And it's through consciousness that we experience anything. So I'll come back to that because it's very, very closely linked to thought. And thought isn't the fact that you and I have thoughts. It's the fact that we can think, that we are the thinkers, okay? And if you think about it, occasionally there will be times in your lives where you've gone, where's that come from? Well, that's what we're talking about. That's what thought is. It's the mechanism with which that energy of mind manifests itself in us. And when it appears in our consciousness is when we start being aware of it, but it's come from somewhere before that. So thought is that process of mind being brought to us and us being able to experience it through our consciousness. Now, I'm aware that that's probably a slightly bizarre concept if you're hearing that for the first time. And I don't have a huge amount of time to go into that in any more details, but if you've got questions, we can certainly go on to that, and we can share information that you can look into in more detail about how this understanding plays out. But what's most important in what Sid is saying and what we're saying today in this conversation is that we aren't asking you to believe anything that we're saying at all. What we're asking you to do is to be curious, to be open-minded, and to listen to what you're hearing with as little judgment as possible. Because in that space, when we're nice and quiet, when we have peace of mind, and we're not trying to compare apples with oranges and try and look at the differences between this theory and that theory, when we're not going through that sort of judgmental cycle of stuff, and we're just curious and open, well, that's when new thought arrives. That's when fresh things come up. So for me, on that train that day 5 years ago, that was a fresh thought. I didn't know that. I hadn't really considered it before. I had experienced it a lot over my life, of flashes of inspiration that came from out of the blue and seemed to save the day, that I then just went, okay, well, that was lucky. This is looking beyond the luck. Okay, so as a company commander in the army, I can remember times when things should have been going really well. Everything seemed to be on rails and working beautifully, but we were all trying very, very hard and getting nowhere, getting more and more frustrated, and being really confused because we had all the resources we need, everything was lined up and nothing was working, and we're trying really hard. What is going on here? Oh, well, we'll just have to try harder. That was what we thought about it, and that's what we did until something shifted and changed. And there were other times when it seemed like the world was against us, that everything was going wrong. But we were managing to, navigate that effortlessly. That things just showed up at the right time. That we were able to connect, or people could read each other's thoughts. Now, at the time, we put that down again to luck and to our training. Put it down to our training because we've been trained for difficult stuff. We've been trained to be able to respond to each other's ideas. We've got drills that we run through in certain situations. Great, true to a degree. To a degree, that's true. But that doesn't stop the best operators out there who have proven themselves in many different ways to not get lost in their thoughts at times and not be able to operate in the way that people are expecting them to, or they're expecting themselves to. And that's fascinating. And that's what this understanding has been so revolutionary for me, because there have been periods in my various careers, be them in the military or outside, where I felt pushed into a corner, and that the course of action that felt right for me was the thing that I shouldn't be doing. And I would beat myself down the route that everybody else thought I should be going down, until the point that I just thought, I've had enough of this. I just need to put my hand up and tell people how I'm feeling. And as soon as I did that, as soon as I took that step, put my hand up and said, sorry, this isn't working. This isn't right for me. That all of that pressure, all of that unpleasantness disappeared. Now, one of our speakers today, Dr. Bill Pettit, is running a course at the moment, and I've been playing catch up because unfortunately it clashes with one of the evenings that I get access to my children. So I've been doing it in catch up mode, in sort of typical Netflix methodology, I suppose. But it's a beautiful way of being able to stay in touch and not miss out on anything. And Bill used an analogy this week, which I thought was brilliant, and actually I've forgotten, but so we'll skip that. But what he was saying is that when, because I've forgotten the story, but when we are feeling up against it, when everything is feeling hard, what the universe is trying to tell us, what mind is trying to tell us, is we're going in the wrong direction. And it's when we let go of that, when we let go of the I must do this or I should do that, because that's what everybody else reckons. That's what I think I should be doing, whatever that looks like for me in that moment. Well, if it's feeling uncomfortable, then maybe I'm not looking at this in the right way. And that's what we're talking about today. It's that, what are the little nudges that we're feeling trying to tell us? So that's where I'd like you to come from today, is to listen to the various different speakers with as much curiosity and openness as you can, and be open to the possibility that there's something behind what it is that we're pointing towards, and we're all pointing at it in our own unique way. The way I see it, from the way that Bron, who's up next, sees it, is going to be subtly different, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay, because I'm living in my own thought-created world, moment to moment, as are all of you. And it's in that uniqueness of all of us that in the knowledge that we're all doing it the same way, that we're all experiencing our own thoughts, that that magic happens, and that we can find peace of mind and drop into that happy, healthy, and contented life that everybody in theory is seeking, and seems so beyond reach for some. So that's the ask of today. That's probably where I'm going to draw stumps for now. Does anyone have any questions? Is there anything you'd like to cover off?
Dave?
Yes, Paul?
Would you just talk about moving on from where we are now, our projection for next year, in particular the course we hope to run?
What we're trying to do. So yes, this whole thing started off as an idea for a book, which is coming. We're about a quarter of a way through collating the information to go into that from the interviews. As I said, Paul and I have set up a monthly call that happens on the second Tuesday of each month, and then there's this conference. But what we're also trying to do is hopefully run a course next year, a sort of training program to allow veterans to understand this understanding in more depth, to bond together as a group, and then be able to go out and feel empowered to help their mates, because it's the empowerment of people to feel that they can help each other that is going to be what changes this landscape, because at the moment the mental or the health system is creaking under all kinds of different pressures, and unless you're really, 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 really ill, you don't get seen, which is fine. They should be seeing the most ill people. But when it comes to mental health and mental well-being, there is a reluctance for us to potentially get involved and put our hands up and go, I'd like to help you. You know, there's a similar sort of thing with general first aid these days, unfortunately. But when we come across someone that's struggling, as a human being, we have the capacity to help them in that moment, whether we know it or not, whether we understand anything or not. Just by showing up with a bit of care, love and attention and some curiosity and a bit of love, then all things can change. And that's what happened for that lad on the phone 8 years ago, and continues to happen with other people today. I don't do anything special. I just turn up with love and curiosity and knowing that they're okay. And that gives them the opportunity to slow down enough and experience the peace of mind that opens the door to them seeing things differently. So we're hoping to run a pilot next year for 8 to 10 guys and girls, or I should probably say people these days, 8 to 10 people, so that they feel that they are able to help their mates. Because it's by getting this understanding out at a low level across society that we're going to change the landscape massively and allow the Creaking Health Service to focus on the people that are really in need of help at the moment, because we've not swamped it with a sort of tsunami of people that have nowhere else to turn other than the bits that are creaking. Has that covered everything you wanted me to there, Paul?
Yeah.
Cool. Does anyone have you, Leslie? I see you've got your hand up. Or am I making that up? No. Does anyone have any other questions? Cool. Well, what I'll do, just before we take a quick break and come back for Brom and Warner in the next session, I'll just sort of give you a quick reminder of the running order, let you know a little bit about where these people are coming from in a short period of time, and then we can go and make ourselves another cup of tea. As I said, when this little session ends, Paul will put everybody back in the waiting room. That will allow Paul and I and Brom to have a quick chat before we let you back in on the hour at 1400 UK time. I'm conscious that people are all over the world. So obviously we've got Bron up next. Bron was a reservist physiotherapist in the British Army. I will talk more about her in a minute. We've then got Fermaya, who is in Israel and was in the Israeli Defense Force. And I won't steal any of his thunder, but he's coming up at 1500 hours UK time. We've then got Dr. Bill Pettit at 1600 hours. Bill's a psychiatrist, former psychiatrist, and has been in this understanding for the best part of 35, 40 years, as well as being a doctor. We'll then have a break. During that break, we'll probably set up a breakout session in the middle of it for anybody that wants to jump in and have a chat. We'll talk more about that when we get to that point. After the break, we've got Aaron and Leela Turner at 1800 hours UK time. Aaron and Leela run an organisation called One Thought, and it's through One Thought that I got my training, and I'm getting some extra training this year, and they've been wonderfully supportive, both to the initiatives that we're talking about here, but also some other veterans work that we're doing in the background. At 1900 hours, we've got a chap called Rob Cook, who was in the US Air Force and now runs the 3PGC podcast, amongst other things. At 2000 hours, a chap called Brad Gallup, who's another US Air Force veteran, but started off his life in the US Marine Corps. And at 2100 hours UK time, we're finishing with Judy Sedgman, who is a psychologist, I want to say. I've probably got that wrong, I'll check. I get my psychologists, psychiatrists and psychotherapists all muddled up, but that's the joys of being dyslexic. So you must bear with me on that front. So that's the running order. And when Judy's finished, I'll just quickly wrap up and see how you found the day. So that's the running order. We're really looking forward to spending the next few hours with you. We know not everybody can be here the whole time, and that people are dropping in and out, and that's absolutely cool. It's all getting recorded, and it will all be put up on the website at some stage in the future. So thank you very much. Now we'll stop for 15 minutes. We'll put you all back in the waiting room and see you again in 15 minutes time. Paul, is there anything you want to say before we send people out?
No, that's all good. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. See you in a minute.